Okay, my name is Bob Smith. I'm the Illinois 4-H State Robotics Educator. My official title is University of Illinois Extension Educator / 4-H Youth Development / Robotics. It's a really long title. So how many people here have heard of 4-H? Okay, everyone's heard of 4-H. So of course 4-H operates... You were in 4-H, okay. So did you know that 4-H was operated by the land grants of part of the extension service of all the land grants in the country? And there's 51 land grants. One of them, the only urban land grant, is in Washington, D.C. And so, yes?
Yeah, historically, black universities are now part of the land grant. Is that true?
I'm not sure.
Okay. But 51, where does the number 51?
I think...
How recent is that? And how much change is there in that number?
I think it's been 50, whenever the land grants were started, which I should know this number. 1863. Yeah, the 1863, then there's 68, there's several iterations of them.
One per state?
One per state. And University of Illinois is the one for Illinois. Let's see. And so I work out of the state 4-H offices, which is on the west side of Champaign, and that means everyone in our office covers the entire state of Illinois. And so we work with different educators through the state. We used to have an educator, which is somebody with the title of extension educator in every county of the state. 5 years ago, due to budget cuts, we whittled down to 27 multi-county units. So we have 27 unit educators and an additional 10 or 11 metro educators. And Alvarez, who will be here in a little while, is the metro educator for Champaign, Rantoul, and Danville. So
how many counties are there?
There are 101 counties.
101 counties. And so going from 101 to 27
right.
was what happened about 5 years
yeah,
ago.
Right.
And how long have you been with 4-H?
I've been with 4-H for 2.5 years. But I'll back up. So in almost every county in the state, there's an extension program coordinator. So there's a 4-H coordinator that works with different clubs in their county. In some cases, there's some really small counties that operate together. Then I started my job as the 4-H robotics educator 2.5 years ago because I was working with Joe doing first Lego League. Actually, Joe was one of the first people who kind of gave me tips on what to do. Then I started doing more work with that than I was with my real job, which wasn't a real job. I was a engineer working for a couple of companies in California. And this position opened up, and I said, oh, I can get paid to do this, so I jumped at the chance. So, but my position has kind of morphed from being the robotics educator to being anything technology related. So it was about 1.5 years ago that the provost office and the extension got together and formed this cross-campus initiative. And Joe actually put me in touch with George, and we came up with the computer programming curriculum, which has been well received so far, and they're working on the next stage.
Computer science 4-H, we call it CS4H.
CS4H.
And do you want to say a little about last summer's workshop and what happened there?
So last summer we had, the initial plan was we would pilot this in robotics clubs because we figured it would be a good extension to the working with robots that they were doing, and they had access to computers. Turns out none of our robotics clubs are really interested in doing anything with programming. They already knew programming, and they didn't really have the time for it. So we reached out to some school and other partners, and so we had a training in May with 6 or 7 volunteers from around the state that came to the training here on campus. One of them implemented a camp over the summer with kids from 3rd through 7th grade in a low-income area in not Chicago, it's in Robbins-Posen School District. And we have a couple of other sites in the state that are piloting that right now. And then as far as robotics goes, most of our clubs are using these. This is a Lego Mindstorms robot. And so we have a statewide challenge where is anyone familiar with First Lego League? Oh, okay.
I was the captain of our first team in high school.
Okay, I'm going to get your name here in a little while. And so is Joe.
In fact, I thought
So most of our clubs are using Lego Mindstorms robot. 4-H has a curriculum based on the Mindstorms robot, pretty much. And we have a statewide competition that's here on campus. It's grown from 10 or 15 teams 5 years ago. Last year we had 60 teams. And one of the differences between ours and FIRST is ours is free, but anybody who's participating has to be a 4-H member. And we have very few rules. So with FIRST Lego League and FIRST, there's strict rules on what you can have on your robot. We say anything. So I'm hoping that a couple of clubs bring this. This is an Arduino-based robot. Anyone heard of Arduinos? So an Arduino-based robot, and you can get for $80. This is $350. So we have a couple of clubs that are using these simply because they can, for the same amount of money, they can have one per child or one per every two.
And are the robotics competitions that 4-H Extension does, do they allow either type of robot?
Yeah, so we allow anything.
Because when I saw one, I think it was Urbana Middle School,
Right.
and they haven't received, it seemed like it was all Lego.
Yeah, that one's all Lego, and anything you have on your robot is Lego. Even, this doesn't have any rubber bands, even the rubber bands would have to be Lego. But for ours, my goal is to have a club build a robot like this, get a 3D printer, design something, 3D print the parts that they put on it. There's other competitions that FIRST has, FIRST Tech Challenge and FIRST Robotics Competition for kids who are 7th through 12th grade and high school respectively. And those, they have more leeway on what they can put on their robots.
Is Illinois the only state that does this? Or?
Every state, well, not every state, but Iowa runs a competition. Theirs is always at the same time as our state fair, so I've never had a chance to go there. I think Maryland has their own, but that one I think is primarily Lego based. Nebraska and Idaho actually just participate in FIRST. Those are the organizations that run FIRST in their respective states. So there's no national 4-H robotics challenge or anything like that. But there's a competition called FIRST Tech Challenge, and there are, I think, 120 teams in the state. 15 of those are 4-H clubs. So the goal is to have kids, work with these, and then as they get older, they can work with the bigger robots. And then we have, I think, 6 FRC teams in the state right now.
So are tech wizards a separate thing, or is the
Tech Wizards are a separate thing. That's something that's funded by the OJJDP, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, part of the Justice Department. And so 4-H is the organization that implements those programs. Is there a Tech Wizard site here?
There isn't. There isn't a Tech Wizard site here.
But it just depends on the county.
Yeah, in Illinois, the Tech Wizard site is the National Initiative Tech Wizards is the mentoring component, which here in this unit we're developing a technology mentoring component. We won't be calling it Tech Wizards because in Illinois the Tech Wizards program is under at the moment a specific sort of funding stream. So we'll be implementing the similar kind of programming, but not calling it Tech Wizards.
And then I'm also kind of branching away from robots that move. We have a number of Arduino kits. I didn't bring one just because that was in my office and I didn't go to the office this morning. But just teaching kids how to program. There's a programming language we use now called DoBlock, which is very similar to Scratch. So if kids do Scratch, they can then move on to this and program robots or anything else. My next big one is I'm hoping to get more kids involved in wearable electronics. That's my 5-minute spiel.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
So, welcome, Alvarez.
Oh, but Alvarez, you have to wear.
If you'll introduce yourself, is it okay if we video?
Yeah, absolutely.
You are?
Absolutely.
You just have to cover our faces.
I get to wear one of these things here.
I should say video record. Videotape is no longer.
So
Okay.
who is the funding? I mean, how does the mentors or the leaders, they not you, but the local ones,
So our funding comes, we have, a third of our funding comes from the federal government, a third of our funding is supposed to come from the state government, and a third of the funding at the local level comes from county governments. But all of our leaders and people who are running clubs are all volunteers, they don't get paid.
And the kids, the participants, they pay anything?
They pay a $20 per year program fee. And for the $20 per year, that we have hundreds, at least 100 different project books, whether it's sewing, cooking, welding, tractors that they can take, and then they work on projects, take them to their county fair, and then if they do well, they can go on to the state fair. With robotics, they have robotics projects that they can work on individually, but if they're working in a group, that's when they do the robotics competition.
And the real estate, you also use schools or other,
For
the meeting places?
it's
I think it varies.
varies.
Yeah, it varies depending upon the kind of club that we're talking about and where the host is. So in some cases, as well as the volunteer, the adult volunteer usually is a key piece. So when the adult volunteer is, for example, a teacher, then it often works well to have that club meet in the school building. But there are some cases when the club volunteer is a parent or a collection of parents of the young people. And in those cases, they might meet in a garage at one of the homes, or as is the case for some of our first competitive leagues, we've been donated, I guess, generously a facility that is at the moment unused. So there's no tenant. They've allowed us to use that space, and so we've got groups that are meeting there. So we really are open and flexible in terms of where we can meet. It really just depends, again, on the volunteer and accessibility, of course, of the youth that are there, accessibility of the space. And then we have our space that we can make available in what we call the EC3, the Extension Creative Community Commons, where we can have club meetings as well.
Is that the Kenyon Road?
That is the Kenyon Road location, exactly. We actually have a 4-H club. One of our FLL robotics clubs meets there regularly. Yeah.
Then I should have added, all of our 4-H leaders and volunteers go through a background check.
Right.
They get a background check. It's probably even more strict than what teachers go through. So, and we have rules about, you can't have one volunteer alone with kids. You have to have two. So there's strict rules on keeping the kids safe. And I kind of left out all the youth development part of what 4-H
Yes,
is.
I'll talk about that because I think that's where you got the toys to bring. I didn't bring any toys to show. So I'll talk a little bit about how we operationalize some of what Bob has shared on a local level through what we call spin clubs or special interest clubs. So what I've got is something that I can pass. I'll just put one on each side. You can kind of take a look. This is a resource that we developed for what we call spin clubs. A spin club is, the spin is for special interest. Sometimes we confuse it with cycling. I just rode my bike here today, but that's a different type of spin club. This spin club is for special interest. And believe it or not, historically in 4-H, 4-H clubs began with groups of youth that cared about the same thing. They met at the same time in the same place, and that's what they worked on. So the original 4-H clubs were, in fact, spin clubs in that the youth who came together shared that special interest. It might have been raising livestock. It might have been growing crops at those times. It might have been sewing or welding or whatever it might have been. The key, though, within 4-H is that it was hands-on learning. And so while those 4-H clubs evolved and began to engage in other aspects of positive youth development, leadership and self-governance, we recently sort of revamped this idea of a spin club. Groups of young people coming together to work on projects together as a group, not just independently to show for your personal award at fair. That's still possible, but with spin clubs, what we do is we pair or partner as little as 5 young people that share an interest with an adult that, as Bob mentioned, we screen and train to facilitate and work through that group of young people. So when we talk with the adults, we let them know, whether they're volunteers or staff at an existing youth agency, that we're not looking for teachers. They don't, and what we mean by that is they don't have to be preparing for being what I call talking head. We don't want to put the volunteers in a situation where they've got to think about it from the standpoint of being in a classroom. And so even when we get teachers that become volunteers for 4-H, it's often a point of an interesting, sort of refreshing point of departure, even for our classroom teachers, because this is an environment where they can really focus on the relationship building and focus on the opportunities to really engage with young people with a smaller ratio. And so we're talking about anywhere from 5 to maybe 12 at the most youth per adult that's working with the groups of young people that we're dealing with. So the resource that you have there is an example of, it's got the book on the inside, which is the Clover. That's kind of like our catalog of 4-H curriculum and activities and projects. But also within the folder, you would see, as a new volunteer, you would see the screening packet that Bob referenced, as well as some resources that would help a volunteer set up a new spin club. It's got a checklist that will kind of describe kind of what that's all about. It's got some very simplified kind of session planning kinds of tools and resources that can be used for volunteers. It's really just designed to kind of make that process easy and streamline that. And so just to give you an idea about some of the spin clubs, so Bob has talked about like the robotics piece with the Lego robots. What we're doing locally is a combination of partnering with existing youth development agencies, as well as identifying young people and volunteers that will do what we call community-wide clubs. So they might be meeting in the library, or like we were talking about, outside of the school setting. And those young people are maybe attending any number of schools to do that work. And the first Robotic League is just one aspect of what the young people are doing. As Bob mentioned, the Arduino is something that is growing. We're also doing some work here and with a colleague in the Cook County area to develop what we're calling, right now it's Combotics. So on campus there is a group within iRobotics that introduced us last year to this idea of battle robots. And we introduced that to the schools at the middle school and the high school level, and the kids just really got excited about it. And so what we've done this year is we're revamping that to develop a more accessible version of the Combot platform. And what we're looking at using, we haven't really settled on the exact platform yet, but what we're looking at using would be something like a sumo bot. So the idea is that the robots are not destroying each other, but they're competing in kind of like a robotics strongman contest. Would be kind of like the way we would describe it. So we're developing essentially the sumo field and working with that. What the youth will be doing is they will be developing both autonomous as well as driver control sessions for that particular type of robotics. And the reason we're doing that is I think also worth noting, because what we're seeing, my role is to engage young people here in the cities in 4-H, and tech and STEM are the areas that are really hot. But what I've noticed is that for some communities, things like Lego means something a little different to some of our young people who are coming from backgrounds where their last experience with Lego was when they were maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years old. And so the concept of Legos as a robotic platform is something that we found to be quite foreign and less interesting to a group of young people, a population of young people. So what they were interested in were things, robots, building robots, engaging in technology that more closely resembled the kinds of technology that they see and have access to on a regular basis. And so that's where we introduced the SumoBot concept, the RC radio control robot concept, and now we're seeing some interest in the drone area. And so doing some things with quadcopters, and not just flying controlled, but also thinking about ways to build an autonomous function within those. So we're seeing young people on our end becoming interested in the programming from that aspect as well. And so thinking about not just the tools and the technology itself, but what problem can it solve? Like what real world useful situation can we build in with that? So with the Arduino project, some of the things that are coming up are an interest in building gadgets. So Bob mentioned the e-textiles and the sewable electronics. That's something that we've got a sewing club now that is evolving, and we're hoping to get engaged into some of that digital embroidery and working with some of that work as well. The last thing I'll mention is the what we call PYD component, or the positive youth development component, because as a 4-H club, what makes a robotics club in 4-H a little different from robotics in other places where it might be happening is the focus that we within 4-H have in positive youth development and the framework that we're using to engage that. So whatever the club might be, robotics or otherwise, we're looking for really 4 components to be realized during that process. And we distill that, we describe that by using the term Big M, B-I-G-M. And what we mean there is the B is for belonging. So the extent to which young people are engaged in a meaningful relationship with another adult as well as a peer, and the insurance that the environment is both one that is safe physically as well as emotionally, and acceptance is happening there. The I is for independence. And so we develop experiences where young people are able to engage in some self-actualization and some being able to make some choices and some decisions about the things that are happening around them. So they're choosing, what to build and what they want it to do, and things of that nature. The next is generosity, and so we're always looking for the opportunities for our clubs, our groups, to be engaged in work that has a positive impact on people outside of themselves or outside of their group. So that could look like a service learning opportunity where the robotics groups are actually going out and doing some volunteering. But it could also include very deliberate opportunities or experiences where young people are helping and teaching. And so we have a program that we call Teens as Teachers, where we're building capacity of teens, of our young people, to share the knowledge that they're learning with their younger peers. And so that's where the generosity comes in. And then the fourth is mastery. And skill mastery is something that we're all familiar with. That's kind of like nuts and bolts of what we're trying to accomplish in developing skills and knowledge with our young people. So those are the pieces that you're going to find are going to be a driving force when 4-H is involved in establishing robotics or any kind of 4-H club. So, any questions about that? Where they are with that? Anything I can help clarify? Yeah.
I applaud the 4-H approach. There's no secret to anyone in this room that robotics is not my thing, and I know the whole world goes on it. But it is not just the competition. It's not adults doing the competition for the kids or the expensive. You say you come up with a lot of options. And within the 4-H framework, so that's the other topics that we go to with that. So,
Thank you. Yeah.
And something I try to do with the robotics challenge, because with robotics you often do see parents doing more work than they should be doing. And so this year I said, if you want to win an award, parents have to sit off to the side. If they're at the table helping the kids, I had somebody marking down that they were helping make those teams didn't get awards. Some people complained about it, and I said, well, the teams that are getting help are probably not going to be the ones getting awards anyway, but I don't want the highest scoring team to be the one that had the parent there building things. And that doesn't just happen. I shouldn't say this in front of the camera, but it doesn't just happen in robotics.
Yeah.
How do you reach out to the kids?
Reach out to the kids, how?
How do you get it? Yeah.
So
How do they find you?
yeah, so I spend quite a bit of time, what I call in the field, which means showing up at libraries right about the time when school's let out, because that is a place where young people gather. So I go where there are young people. After-school programs, rec centers, libraries, and what it tends to be sort of two ways. One, I'm making a connection and developing, cultivating partnerships with those agencies, with those places where they're working with youth, to say, hey, here's what we have to offer. In some ways, like this event here, which is going to be happening. This is an event we're doing at the EC3 called Lights On After School. Lights On After School is a national initiative that is really designed to raise the awareness of after-school programming and the importance of it. What we're doing is we're saying, by hosting this event, that 4-H is also in the out-of-school time business. We support out-of-school time activities and programs. And so we're letting our partners know, we're developing those partnerships and then letting them know what we have to offer that can support the work that they're doing with young people. The next thing we're doing, what I'm getting out of going to those places, is building relationships with young people. So one of the things that we're preparing now with the two libraries, one in Urbana, one in Champaign, is for me to literally go to those places, bringing a project like a robot or an Arduino, and literally just working on it there. Not necessarily as a workshop, not necessarily giving a pitch to say, hey, I think you should join this thing, but to just be working and to building relationships with young people while we're in the space, so that they begin to see, yeah, like this is something that is possible. So there's really there's an organic, relational piece to that in terms of building that clientele of young people.
And then part of my job is to support activities like that throughout the state. So every county several counties have events where they'll bring in all the 7th graders from the county or from the area to a location. They'll do workshops on various activities, and I'll go there to help run the robotics center.
So all the 7th grade classrooms, you mean, or all the kids who happen to be in 7th grade?
All the ones who, I think in some cases it's all the 7th grade classrooms. We have a lot of rural counties where we get all the great 7th grade classrooms in one place.
I went to one with Vermillion a few years ago. We did all the 4th graders and the served by the community college in Southern Illinois. No.
Shawnee Community College?
I think so.
I'll be there next Saturday.
There were so many 4th graders.
Oh, I've been to those. Yeah, I've been to
Buses
those.
of
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
And there were other people
And
around
Sean-
stuff, yeah, but I mean, there were, but it was a 4-H event, and it was the whole county, every 4th grader in the county came with their teacher.
That's my question, kind of been my question, is the relationship between the formal and the informal education. Historically, extension has been extracurricular, 4-H extracurricular. It still has those roots, but it sounds as though more and more you need to reach out, or you are reaching out to schools and school-based environments. And what's your thinking about those relationships and about the future of those relationships? How
Can we
those
talk
should
about
go?
that from the state?
So from the state level, we have several counties where they've started either after-school clubs or will have in-school groups. So there'll be, the classic one is we have a project called Junk Tour Robotics, where they're building, it's not really robotics, but they're building things like trebuchets, marshmallow catapults, little cars that aren't powered, but they work their way up to being powered. So it's all hands-on activities where they're learning some science and engineering, and those are being done in a one day a week in a classroom setting. And so we have several projects and partnerships with schools to do that.
Locally, it's about finding where there's traction to do that kind of thing. And so that, I mean, I wish there was a simple way to find that out. Really, it just takes being connected to the individual school at the building level. So it involves me sort of meeting with either a principal, assistant principal, or anyone really who's willing to listen to what we have to offer, and then finding out like what they're doing. So one example is we have a partnership with Urbana Middle School that has gone now a couple of years in the making, where we've had a 4-H club set up in their after-school program, their after-school splash program. Well, in sort of talking about planning for this year, rolling the same thing out this year, I learned that school has a media literacy course that they're teaching during the school day. Well, they've got audio production suite and they've got video production suite, and those things lend really well to a project that I'm working with GISLIS and the Center for Digital Inclusion that involve digital literacy. And so we're now talking about this opportunity. There's a new teacher, he's excited, but needs some resources and could use some support. We're talking about this opportunity for 4-H to come in for the earlier periods where they're actually doing this as a class. And so that opportunity, I wouldn't know about it had I not literally just been in the building speaking with this particular new teacher about the after-school program possibility, and then learn about this during the school day possibility. So, so at the local level, it's really, I just try to keep in touch with what's happening in school buildings and try to find a connection with someone who is aware, of those opportunities.
But I would guess the majority of our school-based clubs are after-school clubs.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Not necessarily at school.
For sure.
But you don't have systematic information for each school, kind of letting know that you are available.
I think every unit will advertise the fact that they have programs, but other than that, we just don't have the staffing to go to every school and try to start.
Right. Yeah. So in this unit, for example, the focus within this area consists of myself and one, maybe two other full-time staff people, and that's it. The rest would be volunteers. So.
Couple full-time staff people for the whole quad county area?
Four county area.
4 county, yeah.
Well, it occurred to me because I need to reference you guys. You're probably familiar with like Spurlock and Kim Sheehan has a grant working with Extension around the state, doing a series of workshops all summer and into this fall for educators and 4-H leaders called An Artifact Speaks, and taking the concept of museum pieces and educational things and again train the trainer out, which is in a slightly different topic, back from the, again, sharing the land grant expertise, in it used to be in crops and animals, and home extension, and extension of services, but that everybody needs to be a partner in this because it is a Detroit County, nor should necessarily have been, and a very, very interesting project. I could see calling Professor Barrymore and taking her out to.
Well, you raise a good point with
the
the capacity building piece. One of the programs that I'm working with that I referenced, the Center for Digital Inclusion in GISLIS, and the Fab Labs involved with that as well. And in addition to sort of going out with these mobile Fab Labs and conducting programming, we're building capacity. We have so we're identifying those places where there are people who have an interest and are motivated to engage youth in digital literacy and fabrication and the like, and we're training them to be able to implement that work, just like as you mentioned.
Yes,
so
part of my
it
question, I was
continues.
going to ask your other broad definition of there is more to STEM than robotics, so I'm glad to see. I think the Maker Lab movement and other things is a natural.
Right.
That's very interesting.
So when I go to Southern Illinois, I think they have 60 or 70 teen teachers. They were teens that were trained in the spring to do robotics and video, and they also led cooking. So these teams led camps all throughout the summer down in the very southern tip of the state.
Can you talk about the relationships between local industry and 4-H, things like that? I was thinking about the Palestine Library, and the librarian there was talking about her relationship with a local company that was doing something pretty exciting that they could bring in kids to see. Is there more of are there lots of things like that around the state that 4-H and Extension support?
Yeah, a lot of that happens at the local level, so I
Okay.
might not necessarily know about it, but I know that different companies will sponsor events. They'll donate to their local extension office, which then filters down to 4-H.
And we're in so locally here, we're reaching out now to some of the business community. There are some existing relationships already, particularly with like robotics, for example. So Caterpillar and John Deere have been involved, of course, with supporting that. What we're doing now with this maker space movement is really trying to reach into more of some of the tech companies and the innovators that are here in the area. So we're beginning to make those connections, at least to be known and develop some relationships. Horizon Hobby comes to mind. In fact, I was just talking with some folks on the other side of campus. They're doing a quadcopter demonstration over at Cranard and so forth. So I was just connecting with folks like that because they're right here local and they're interested in getting involved. So I think it really is just a matter of developing the relationship, and we're beginning to see that happen now.
So every county has a extension council, so there's groups that will try to do fundraising at the local level, along with getting the funding from the county. It's called, well, actually at the state level, it's called the county board match. So the county board will contribute a certain amount to extension, and the state contributes, used to be 100%, then it was 85%, I think now it's maybe down to 60% of whatever the county.
Because you're paying tax also to extension.
So let's say the Champaign County board gives $100,000 to the local extension office.
Oh, matching.
Yeah, so
That was the notion of the cooperative extension, so everybody cooperates and
So we
contributes.
and we bring university resources out to the field.
And then, can you say some things about the breadth of the university's involvement? That historically, ACES has been the correct me, the connector to the state, the faculty there, and now CS4H is one of those, and the digital inclusion grant and other efforts to reach the faculty more broadly.
So historically, we were cows, corn, sewing, cooking, tractors, things like that, kind of branching out to other areas.
Yeah.
And I see part of my role is at least reaching out to some of the engineering colleges on campus.
Right.
I don't know that we have anyone that reaches out to LAS, but I've done a little bit.
Philosophy for the farmers.
So something else we have in the summertime, we have a unique summer camp opportunity called Illini Summer Academies. It's for high school aged kids. They come to campus for 3 days. They get 16 hours of programming with the different departments on campus. And it gives them an opportunity to come to the University of Illinois, see the University of Illinois, and hopefully come here. And when it started, it was all ag or ACES-based colleges, but now we have, I think, 13 different college partners, including HDFS, which is part of Human Development Family Services, which is part of ACES, Natural Resources, Environmental Science, Ag Business. We're trying to get animal science this year. Then we have EC, electrical and computer engineering, computer science, aerospace engineering, chemistry, molecular and cellular biology. There's a creative writing one. We used to have one with art, but I guess they had some changes in they had a reorganization in their department, so they had to drop this. So, if you have any ideas for any others, feel free to let me know, because I am the liaison to the college.
Do other universities do that as well?
Yeah, I think some do. And the big selling point for ours is we're cheaper than the rest of them. But we're also only 3 days instead of 5 days.
Oh, or the other.
Yeah, so like games camp, and I think aerospace has their own camp.
No, I mean, are there other 4-H, you know, other universities?
I think Michigan State has a big one.
Okay, but not in Illinois.
Not in Illinois, no.
4-H is
Well,
part of it.
actually, Bradley University has affiliation with the local extension there. They have this debate.
Yeah. Their extension coordinators exactly.
The ground.
Okay.
For the most part.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.